Hey there, friend. We're going to read A Way to Love essay. And we're going to feel what it feels like in our bodies to believe the words that Anthony de Mello is writing. I think I accidentally called Anthony de Mello Thomas Aquinas in a previous video. Maybe they're the same. So this one's called The Mountain of Prayer. And in this essay will be the most truthiness you can handle, and then a little bit more. And you'll try to go right up to the edge, Benjamin, me, of your truthiness handling ability, and you won't go farther than you feel like you can, and you'll trust yourself to navigate that, to navigate where you will be when you get there, and to keep going grittily, forcefully, with that faith. Yeah? You can handle more than you think, buddy. Yeah. And you can do that because I'm there for you, because I will hold you through whatever, because the more pain you experience, the more love I will have for you. It's a perfectly beautiful equation that balances out in ultimate emptiness. Okay, here we go. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Yeah, boy! Nominus. We're on it. We're on it. You're on it. Okay, so I've already had one interpretation of this from some very valued conversations with a dear friend, and we'll see what de Mello is talking about here. Okay, so has it ever occurred to you that you can only love when you are alone? What does it mean to love? It means to see a person, a thing, a situation as it really is, and not as you imagine it to be, and to give to it the response it deserves. You cannot love what you do not even see. And what prevents you from seeing? Your concepts, your categories, your prejudices, your projections, your needs and attachments that label you have drawn from your conditioning and from your past experiences. Seeing is the most arduous thing a human being can undertake, for it calls for a disciplined, alert mind, whereas most people would much rather lapse into mental laziness than take the trouble to see each person and thing anew in present moment freshness. I'm going to do a quick comment for myself. I have a very strong desire to swim in my own craving and to lapse into laziness. Hi, Heat. I'm very fortunate that it manifests in a way that I simply want to escape from my own caring about things and convince myself that I don't care for a while. And this is something apparently I certainly have done many times in the past, and I will not begrudge myself now should it be further indicated in the future by my body that some self-care, even of the unwholesome kind, might be the thing to do. For me, one of my integration processes is the de-shamification and destigmatization of my own processes of self-care, even if they're a lot of bit, sometimes maybe kind of unusual. And probably not that unusual. They're self-care, tricky. It's all very tricky, you know? And this is where the trust comes in, I suppose. Trust that I won't ultimately trick myself any more or less than I need to. This could be a trick. You don't know. That's part of the trust. Ooh, trippy. Okay. To drop your conditioning in order to see is arduous enough, but seeing calls for something more painful still. That's right, it's all a gauntlet of pain. The dropping of the control that society exercises over you. Right. That's why instead of saying, yeah, I like to, well, yeah, I have a fetish that is not societally allowed, and I like butt orgasms, which is not something dudes are supposed to be into, particularly not ones that claim to be heteronormative. So I guess I am. I don't know. I find men very attractive, but I don't want to kiss them. I don't want to kiss them. I find women generally attractive. Some of them I do want to kiss. I don't know what that means. I don't know. These labels. I want to find you, my love. I know you're out there, wherever you are. I thought I found you, but then I'm like, well, I guess not. Let's not give up on that yet. Either. Okay. So, the dropping of the control that society exercises over you, a control whose tentacles have penetrated to the very roots of your being, so that to drop it is to tear yourself apart. I'm so scared to do that. I have to admit that. Because I don't know what's left to tear apart. You think you've torn everything away with some psychedelics, and with some mindfulness, and with some esoteric reading and all the conversations. But you know there's more to tear away. By definition, there has to be, or you wouldn't be scared. Ben. If you wish to understand this, think a little of a little child that is given a taste for drugs. As the drug penetrates the body of the child, it becomes addicted. Its whole being cries out for the drug. To be without the drug is so unbearable and that a torment that it seems preferable to die. Now, this is exactly what society did to you when you were a child. You were not allowed to enjoy the solid, nutritious food of life, work, and play, and the company of people and pleasures of the senses and the mind. You were given a taste for the drug called capital A, approval, capital A, appreciation, capital A, attention, the drug called capital S, success, capital P, prestige, capital P, power! Having got a taste for these things, you became addicted and began to dread their loss. You felt terror at the prospect of failure, of mistakes, of criticisms of others. So you became cravenly dependent on people and lost your freedom. Dude. Others now have the power to make you happy or miserable. And much as you now hate the suffering this involves, you find yourself completely helpless. I don't know how to process that. I'll keep reading. There is never a minute when, consciously or unconsciously, you are not attuned to the reaction of others, marching to the drum of their demands. When you were ignored or disapproved of, you experience a loneliness so unbearable that you crawl back to people to beg for the comfort known as capital S support, capital E encouragement, capital R reassurance. To live with people in this state involves never-ending tension, but to live without them brings the agony of loneliness. You have lost your capacity to see them clearly, and they are as they are, and to respond to them accurately, because mostly your perception of them is clouded by your need to get your drug. The consequence of all this is terrifying and inescapable. You have become incapable of loving anyone or anything. If you wish to love, you must learn to see again. If you wish to see, you must give up your drug. You must tear away from your being the roots of society that have penetrated to the marrow. You must drop out. Maybe that's why this self-disclosure need is strong for me. I dropped out of society when I was 14 and hiding diapers in my room because I liked the way they felt. But I stayed in because the approval was so necessary. I don't know, because I'm scared, because of shame. It's overwhelming. You don't know what to make of it. It's so alienating. Why does my body ask of me these things? Why doesn't my body ask me to do what everybody else seems like their body's asking them to do? So in some sense I feel a little dropped out. In some sense I feel like I'm trying to transcend dropping out, move to decouple your approval. You should be approving. I still want your approval, but I want your approval of my vulnerability. And I want your vulnerability in return, and I trust that that's a higher level integration of need for consensus. Although maybe not as high as DeMillo's talking about here in terms of the utter disregard for consensus reality. And just looking for reality as it is. Externally, everything will go on as before. You will continue to be out in the world, but no longer of it. And in your heart you will now be free at last and utterly alone. It is only in this aloneness, this utter solitude, that dependence and desire will die, and the capacity to love is born. For one no longer sees others as a means to satisfy one's addiction. It's so beautiful. Only someone who has attempted this knows the terror of the process. It's like inviting yourself to die, yeah? It is like asking the poor drug addict to give up the only happiness he has known and to replace it with a taste for bread and fruit and the clean, fresh morning air and the sweetness of water from the mountain stream while he's struggling to cope with his withdrawal symptoms and with the emptiness that he experiences within himself now that his drug is gone. I have no idea to what extent I'm an addict and to what lengths my addictions will go and how genuine or fabricated my love is. It's all a real mystery. And I'm open to being with the fact that I don't know and to feel what that feels like for as much as I can fucking take. And has a huge amount to do with my sense of the benevolence of you behind the camera. The benevolence of that for whom I am the subject. To imagine myself worthy of your benevolence is everything. I'm not sure how that marries and stitches in with what DeMillo is saying. To the drug addict's fevered mind, nothing can fulfill the emptiness except his drug. Can you imagine a life in which you refuse to enjoy a single word of approval and appreciation? Or to lean on someone's arm in which you depend on no one emotionally, so no one has the power to make you happy or miserable anymore. You refuse to need any particular person or to be special to anyone or to call anyone your own. And boy, wouldn't it be impossibly special to have the people in your lives to whom you were special and to whom were special to you, to be people who are aspiring to integrate and internalize the capital R reality that this book attempts to point out for us? What kind of highly, beautifully integrated, like, I love you to death, but I completely relinquish all control over you. Like, all control. Like, you can do anything and I still love you kind of attitude. It's so powerful. And some ego gets smuggled in. Because I feel like it can be used low-key as a power move. And so you want to be careful with it too. So now you can't just stop anywhere. Have to let each object become the subject of the next moment's witnessing. It's insanity forever. I know. It's okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. Even the birds of the air have their nests and the foxes their holes, but you will have nowhere to rest as you head in your journey through life. If you ever get to this state, you will at last know what it means to see with a vision that is clear and unclouded by fear or desire, and you will know what it means to love. But to come to this land of love, you have to pass through the pains of death, for to love persons is to have died. And the needs for persons to love persons to have died to the need for persons and to be utterly alone. I'm very scared to be oriented. To be utterly alone is the Godhead. Walking around. It's not utterly alone. It transcends self-other. And yet, you certainly don't look at anything in the external world as something you make demands of. And that includes the other apparent minds and bodies. And this video stuff is beautiful because I can kind of imagine the best person I want to talk to. Anyway, almost to the end here. So, how would you ever get there? By ceaseless awareness. And the infinite patience and compassion that you would have for a drug addict. It will also help you to undertake activities that you can do with your whole being. Activities that you much love to do. That while you're engaged in them, success or recognition or approval simply do not mean a thing to you. It will help, too, if you return to capital N, nature. Send the crowds away and go up to the mountain and silently commune with trees and flowers and animals and birds, with sea and sky and clouds and stars. Then you will know why your heart has brought you into that vast desert of solitude. There is no one there by your side. Absolutely no one. At first it will seem unbearable, but that is only because you are unaccustomed to aloneness. But if you manage to stay there for a while, the desert will suddenly blossom into love. Your heart will burst into song, and it will be springtime forever. Today's episode has been brought to you by the letter K and the number 8. Whee!